T12 Incomplete Paraplegic.
This guy makes me look bad.
Like, the farther I get out from being paralyzed, the less I think about what could be better.
Yeah, it's more like, how can I die quickly?
Like, I've had an amazing childhood, and it all prepared me for the moment of being paralyzed. Decided that I wanted to do a triathlon.
Mason is the perfect example of what you should do. I am not. I know I should stretch, and I know that's always been the thing that I should do. I just can't. The motivation's just not there.
You know, when I was in rehab there, like, they pushed us so hard in the gym, and it was actually kind of crazy at some points, but it was awesome. Like, I was finally, because they knew I was an athlete. Other people that don't understand disability, that's a lot of their view of us, is like sad, complaining.
Welcome back to the Not Quite Pod. Today we've got Mason with us. Mace, do you want to just quickly let everyone know a bit about yourself, what you do, and sort of a general intro to yourself?
Cool, yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Mason Branstrator. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook as Mason Branstrator on all those platforms. And I just try to spread as much positivity as possible and awareness that people with disabilities, we can be independent and we can have awesome lives too. I'm a T12 paraplegic wheelchair user, and so yeah, that's kind of what I do.
And also, this guy's content on his, particularly his Instagram content, is next level. Like, so I was literally, we were just saying before we started recording, some of the stuff he does, I'm like, I would die if I did that. Like, just what, like, some of the stuff, like, I saw one the other day that you were scooting around ice on your Firefly, but basically just drifting. And I'm like, if I did that, there is no way I'd stay in the chair. I would just face plant the floor.
That was sweet. So I do have a little trade secret on that one. That was actually sped up times 2. But yeah, but I was going pretty fast. I mean, I had to be going pretty fast to drift. So yeah, that was pretty
It must have been hard to keep the wheelchair stable.
Yeah, I mean, it was a slow drift. Fair. You know, it's a little slower than what you see, but a little bit, a little bit.
Because I saw you attempting trying to do like a flagpole plank while holding on to the wheelchair today. I think I saw that one today.
Oh yeah, that was awesome. I was doing a bit of some push-ups on the wheelchair with the Firefly attached.
What I want to know is what goes through your brain to go, do you know what? Today I'm going to try this.
When I was originally paralyzed and, you know, in my rehab hospital, there was a huge emphasis on walking again. And I had this ability to use spasms in my legs to straighten them out. And I thought that I had to walk to do a lot of things or, like, you know, have more function. But all I really needed was some straight legs, and then I can just maneuver them around to however I want. And so ever since I figured out that, you know, I could stand up, I could stand wherever I wanted, I could stand with just my wheelchair. Like, I've just been pushing the limits everywhere. Like, see what we can do here, you know? Let's make it happen.
Just like that. I just, some of the stuff, I'm still fanboying here going, how does he do it? But you mentioned obviously about your injury. So just, would you mind just touching on what your disability is, how it affects you, and sort of what your daily challenges are in terms of what you can't do?
Yeah, so I broke my back in a skiing accident basically 2 years ago at this point. Yesterday was my 2-year anniversary. And since then, you know, when I broke my back, I had no idea, you know, what being paralyzed meant, what that was going to mean for me. And over the next couple months, I learned about my body, how to take care of myself. I'm a full-time wheelchair user. And I think, like, learning all of the things that I have to do to take care of myself has just been insane. And I'm finally at the point, like 2 years later, where it's just automatic. There's things that take longer. There's extra things I have to do, use the bathroom. I mean, pretty much just that. Like, otherwise everything's pretty normal. But yeah, that's a little bit about my disability. Oh, I guess I'll re-go over what exactly my disability is. So I'm a T12 Incomplete Paraplegic, which means I'm partially paralyzed from the waist down. So like right here and down is all partially paralyzed. I can feel all my legs and I can kind of move certain muscles pretty much everywhere, but like nothing's even close to what it would like be before the injury, obviously. So
That's
that's my sitch.
fair enough. I mean, as well, it's always amazing as well when you get your disability later in life. I feel like there's such a bigger adaptation period as well. I think it's always interesting speaking to guys like you because obviously, for want of a better word, you've seen both sides. So like you come in with a very different mindset to maybe say the rest of us. The rest of us are like, yeah, it is what it is. Like, yeah, but then you're like, oh wait, but like this needs fixing because I didn't see this before when I was able-bodied, and now all of a sudden I'm having to deal with this. And it's really
Right.
interesting because, like, I always feel like you guys give such a perspective to able-bodied people, saying, "Look, anyone, this can happen to anyone. It's not just
Right. Right.
these select few are disabled. It can happen to anyone at any time, and it's just great to see like." Literally, clearly, you haven't let it stop you. Like we'll jump into it later, but you're in the gym. You're, as I say, doing flipping stunts, and I'm like, I can't even do half the stunts, and I've been in a wheelchair since I was about 4, and I'm like, this guy makes me look bad. Literally,
That's
I watch
awesome.
you and I go, I should know how to do that, but I have no idea how he's just done that. But yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
such a like. I think it's a major different perspective. What would you say is one of the biggest things like you've learned since again having your disability?
Since being paralyzed, one of the biggest things I've learned, man, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard for me to differentiate what I was gonna learn at this time in my
Mm.
life. Anyway, I mean, I'm 19. You know, I'm kind of a young adult,
Yeah,
and so I'm figuring everything out in the world at the same time that my life changed
yeah,
forever. So I mean, there's millions of things that
yeah,
I've
yeah.
probably learned since being, but um,
Or maybe like
I think to touch
or
on
maybe like a perspective that's changed, or like something that
a
you maybe would
perspective.
have gone.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have thought about this way before my accident, but now I'm
yeah,
like,
totally.
whoa,
Yeah, to touch on like the, mobility and just like being an able-bodied person and then being paralyzed. I think it's like the farther I get out from being paralyzed too, I just adapt and like do things um like I don't even the farther I get out from being paralyzed, the less I think about what could be better. To something like that
yeah,
sounds like
yeah.
it shouldn't be
No, I
that
get
way,
you.
but like the more, yeah, like especially for those people that were born with things that have always been in wheelchairs, I see them and they're just like, they just make the best of the situation they have and they don't really try to like push for more. And I feel like a lot of the advocacy work comes from people that were like, this is how it was for me before,
Yes.
and now I don't have these things, and so I want to change
Yeah.
it, um, which makes total sense. And so I'm trying not to get stuck in because I'm so able to adapt with everything that I have. I'm trying to be, spreading positivity, awareness, and also like at the same time pointing out things that might be harder for other
Yeah.
people. So that's been a line that I've been struggling with because you've seen that I can do a whole bunch of stuff and I can make things happen. But certainly, like, I can't just go up staircases like on my own with my wheelchair. I get help.
Yeah.
I have my friends around, and a number of things like that. But I guess geez, the biggest thing I've learned since being disabled or active change probably has to do with how little people appreciate um, the world around us
Yeah.
and like the small things that are just like so beautiful and um, magical
Yeah.
that I live in Minnesota and everywhere around me is wilderness
Yeah.
and just like seeing that and just kind of being struck by the beauty of nature is definitely something I didn't appreciate as much before my accident, which is weird to say because like before I could run around outside and you
Yeah,
know climb
yeah.
trees, and now I'm stuck to sitting in my wheelchair and like moving around pretty slowly relatively, and it's surprising to me that I appreciate those things more. And when I was first paralyzed, I thought, oh no, I've lost everything. But really, I've just appreciated things more. And I have friends, actually, all of my friends, no matter what their mobility situation is in Minnesota, are like, I just love nature so much more. Like, it's
I
beautiful.
think
Just sit here and look at it
it's
all.
really interesting because a lot of people say like once you've had like a major incident happen in your life, whether it's mental health issue or major physical issue, you gain. You everyone says it's like really cliche, but everyone says, "Oh, you gain perspective," and I think it's true. You do. You like you say, you appreciate the little things in life that go, "Oh, I didn't actually look at this the same way that I do now, but oh my god, that's amazing."
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
it's again it's all about like that what like I was saying earlier, you hit the nail on the head. It's all about perspective, and like you said with the advocacy, it's very interesting to see someone in your position doing advocacy because as you say you are in both camps, you understand both sides, where for someone like me, I am disabled and I don't know any different. Everyone goes, oh, what's it like to be in a wheelchair? And I'm like, um uh I don't know. What's it like to walk?
Yeah,
um,
yeah, totally.
so it is that just perspective. What was it like growing up for you, going through school, and like how your friendship groups, and how did those all come about?
Yeah, I'm so like beyond fortunate to have everything that I've had. I have two loving parents, and an awesome sister, and I've you know all of school has been awesome. I got to run around as a kid, play sports, and have fun when I wasn't paralyzed. And I just kind of took it all in.
Yeah, yeah,
I never imagined that I'd become paralyzed, and so I guess I was just lucky in that aspect that I was able to be present for all of that. And so, I mean, all things considered, like I've had an amazing childhood, and it all prepared me for the moment of being paralyzed.
yeah,
And with my friends, I've had a lot of amazing friends since I've been little. I've been kind of like the orchestrator in friend groups
yeah, yeah.
um, since I was a kid,
I
and
relate to that.
I do. Yeah, yeah. I definitely would say that it was a rocky start when I first got paralyzed,
Yeah,
kind of orchestrating in the wheelchair, and I have taken a little bit of a step back from playing that role
yeah.
because this has just been a lot, and honestly, I'm kind of stepping into a new role with my disabled community and my paralyzed friends. But the learning curve for like my friends to help me and to kind of understand the situation, there's it there's not too much explaining that you can do to help your friends understand. I mean, there are to some degrees, but it kind of comes over time.
Yeah.
Um, and if they're good people, they'll start to understand what they can do, where they can help, and how they can act to support you. So
I think the
yeah,
key is like communication. Like I always say, it's always
yeah,
better to ask if I need help, because if I answer and say no, then you know the answer, and that's that. The issue comes in is if you're very persistent and go, I've already said no, but you keep coming back and go, are you sure? I've already answered the question. Leave me alone.
yeah,
And it's
yeah, yeah,
it's just that get like you say, the more time they spend around people with disabilities. So, like for example, my girlfriend before she met me, she had no exposure to disabilities, like barely any. Didn't know what to do, and now it's second nature to her, and she works for a disability marketing agency. So
oh, so cool.
it does show you like the more you're exposed to something, the more you can just understand it, and the more you understand the individual, the support they need, and it creates that really good relationship of I know what you need help with, and I know what you don't need help with. So I'm just going to leave you be until you do need that support. So you're right. It is that just over time, people just get more and more well versed in your support needs, other support needs, and also I think as well if a family member becomes disabled or is disabled, you're automatically more aware of some of the things you have to tackle. Like, oh, I've got to make sure I can actually get into that restaurant, or I can actually do that sport, or anything like that. I think it's all down to exposure, and it's quite. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I quite like that, like, education element of disability. Like, some people don't like it, like that whole thing. Oh, I shouldn't have to explain my disability, but there is a part of me that weirdly enjoys that whole. So let's talk about disability. Like, you think after 24 years of explaining it, I'd be bored to Kingdom Come about explaining? Okay, let me talk to you about my disability. Let me talk to you about the disabled community. You think you'd get bored of it, but I don't know. I weirdly enjoy it.
Yeah, I just want to touch on what we were talking about before with the. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Screen just went black, but we're good. Um, Before, like, with, friends and family members asking what they can do to help, that is really the biggest thing. Like, if you best education you can give them is say, like, if I look like I need help, just say to me, do you need help,
Yeah,
or how can
yeah,
I help?
yeah,
Like, that question is like the one and really only thing that you need to know, and then at that point further education
yeah,
can be given, if it's needed. So, like, if you're watching this and you don't know how to help, somebody that that's disabled, like, just ask them,
yeah.
what can I do to help? Is there anything I can do?
And the
That's
only thing I'd add to that is also, don't be too pushy. Just, if the person said no, and because the thing is, like, I always come back to the example of, like, me putting my equipment in my car always looks far more like difficult and intense than it actually is for me, because it's the normal.
yeah.
This is my normal. I might look like I'm struggling, but I know exactly what I'm doing. And everyone goes, "Oh
Yeah.
my God, can I help you?" And I'm like, "No, I'm absolutely fine. I may look like I'm about to fall over, but I promise you I'm not."
Yeah, totally.
So it's
Definitely.
just, again, it just comes down to that communication thing. So how was that experience of, like, once you had your accident, obviously your friends getting used to what you needed support with? How was that quite a smooth communication, or was it a little bit rocky because you were still figuring stuff out yourself?
Yeah, I mean, definitely pretty rocky at sometimes. Um, I don't know. I was definitely, like, angry when things first happened, and how people are, and then you snap at the ones that are closest to you. But over
Yeah.
time, things got better, and they learned when to ask and what to do, and but yeah, what was that thing we were talking about after this? Something really. Oh, I know what it is. Um, People getting upset about, like, asking other people asking you about your
Yeah.
disability, and this is something that I feel like super about, because it happens to all of us that are disabled,
Yeah.
um, and, like, for me, I feel like I'm doing my best job when I'm staying positive about the situation, but also trying to educate people, so I don't feel like I'm
Yeah.
complaining, because I think that that's a lot of, um, other people that don't understand disability. That's a lot of their view of us, is like sad, complaining,
Yeah.
and those kinds of things.
The
And so
whole
I don't want
wow, you're out with your friends. You have friends, and I'm like, yes, yes, we
to.
do.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Um, yeah, so the education piece of it is like, obviously one of my close friends told me this, and it's that, like, a super important thing to remember when you might be upset when somebody asks you about your disability. Like, you can gauge your response by their question. So, like, if it's a pretty, like, even if it's a big question and, like, they don't know you, what they're asking probably is the simple response, and that's all you have to give them.
Yeah.
But if they're wondering something more, and they're really curious about getting educated about disability, like, give them that education.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just spreading the positive word. So I also love educating people that ask me about myself, and telling them what's going on and
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
I think it's a very case by case basis because I think any disabled person, like you're gonna have, or any person has up and down days, and there'll be days where I really don't want to do the let me quiz you about your disability day, and I really don't want to do that day because something's happened or whatever. And I think it's just judging that, but then also I'm always conscious, and I've spoke about it several times on the podcast of you have to gauge your response as well because the problem is with the stereotype that disabled people have is that we all fit in the same box. So if you're quite aggressive with your response of how dare you ask me that question, I shouldn't have to answer that, that response is then probably going to be what that person thinks the rest of the disabled community are when you ask them about their disability, when actually they've just caught you on a day that wasn't the right day for you and you've snapped, and that's been the end result. So it's just being very conscious of it, and it's really hard because whenever I spoke about it, like people have widened my perspective of it because it's like, oh, but I shouldn't have to change myself to fit what other people think. But then I just like there is just I think a level of responsibility that disabled people have to educate where we can. And I'm not saying you've got to do this every day. I'm just saying it's something you've got to have in the back of your head going, if someone's asking you a million questions, it's probably because they've never met anyone in a wheelchair or that have a disability or that are different. And that, if like you say, if you can provide that small amount of education, it's great. But then the only thing I would add to that is don't go, like, if you're listening to this as one of the people that want to ask the questions, please don't go straight in for the jugular. I've had far too many people go, so tell me about your sex life. And I'm like, okay. And it's
That's
like,
awesome. It's not awesome.
Oh, and it's like, okay, hi, my name's Charlie. Where are you from? What's your name? How old are you? Let's do that bit first before you go straight in with, so, you're in a wheelchair. It's like, how does it work? Does it work?
Yeah,
and you're like,
yeah.
Oh, Jesus, like, why do people go straight there? It's always straight there. It's never really like, oh, so like, what's it like? That one's fine. What's it like to be in a wheelchair is fine. But just going straight in with the personal questions, it's like, or the other one's, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, nothing. As far as I'm aware, I'm still breathing. I'm okay.
Yeah, totally. I think like when people ask you super direct questions like that, it's almost as if they're not treating you as they would treat somebody else. Like they're treating you differently. And so I like the main message that we always try to get out is like, we're people. Yeah, we're people. We have feelings. Don't go straight in with the deep questions because we might be offended. But and the other thing about, responding, when people, let me figure out how to phrase this. What you said about speaking for the whole disabled community when you talk is especially true when you get that person that, like you're saying, comes up with all these questions. The reason is because they probably don't know a lot about the disabled community. They've never run into somebody in a wheelchair, maybe. And so like consciously thinking, okay, what I say to this person might be like their idea of disability for, the near future, like the rest of their life, maybe a bit extreme, but you don't have to go that deep. But just giving that a little thought that, hey, what you say to people in public is their perception of what disability is like and what your disability is like.
I completely agree. And I think as well, one thing I always point out to people is, and obviously this only really works for people that are within like the social media communities. Obviously, if you're not like, there are definitely people out there, and rightly so, that aren't comfortable discussing their disability. But if you're in or know of the social media space particularly, point them in a direction of someone that will answer their questions. So point them in the direction of me or you or if they're asking about autism, point them in the direction of an autistic creator. Then that way you don't have to do the work. You're literally going, oh, go follow this account or go message this person, and they'll happily go through everything with you. And that's another thing to be mindful as well.
Yeah.
Also, another thing I want to jump into as a fellow fitness freak myself. Cool, like jumping straight into the gym after a spinal cord injury, that must have been such a strange journey. of learning, obviously, all the different movements you can now do and sort of adapting your routine.
Yeah.
Have you always been into fitness and been into the gym, or has it been something since your injury you've got into?
Uh, so I've always been into sports, and I've always been into um, fitness to some degree. I
Yeah,
mean, I was a runner, and I loved running. Loved running, loved biking. I got hurt skiing. I like to do
yeah,
those kinds of things. But at my rehab hospital, Craig Hospital,
yep,
um, which obviously outstanding. If you haven't heard of
yep,
them, go check them out.
yep,
They've got all the resources that you need. And when I was in rehab there, like they pushed us so hard in the gym, and it was actually kind of crazy at some points. But it was awesome. Like I
yeah,
was finally, because they knew I was an athlete, so like they got to
yeah,
me, and they pushed me how I wanted to be pushed. And after being in the gym and doing that kind of upper body work and feeling that rush that I got from like running, like that side ache that just
yeah,
like pains,
yeah,
like from doing like ski erg and various like supersets of things, like I was like, oh man, this is awesome.
yeah, yeah.
And so like that was kind of early rehab, and then I did a ton of work to try to walk again. You guys can check out my two
Yeah.
videos. I have a 1 year anniversary and a 2 year anniversary video on YouTube, which are also linked in my Instagram bio and all my social medias. There's a link tree that can connect you to everything. But that was, you know, quite a journey for me to, really try to walk again, because I'm in a middle ground of like, I have abilities to move my legs, but I'm not
Yep.
quite ambulatory to walk with, say, like crutches in a functional way. And so that was kind of like therapy. That was like working out and rehab for like a good part of a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I didn't work too much on my upper body because I was doing that, with the walker and all
Naturally,
these
yeah.
things. Yeah, just naturally, right? Moving my body around. And so when I finally kind of like put down trying to walk so hard and move my legs, I was like, I'm gonna go get to the gym, and see how I feel, how my legs relax or react. And I started going to the gym. I decided that I wanted to do a triathlon, so I got all
I
of the
saw.
equipment ready for that. I got a donated racing chair. Um, I have a hand cycle that was also donated to me by Craig. Super awesome. And then I've been learning to swim. So, and also for the swimming piece, there's a swim orthotic coming. There'll be some more news on that, but I'm
Nice.
super excited for that. My friend Justin Pines is getting that to me. Um, so I'm all set for that, and I can't wait for all that cardio. But in the gym, um, like I just feel so free to do like whatever I want, and I can move my body onto every piece of equipment. If you find the right gym as a paraplegic, you can pretty
Yeah.
much get anywhere. They're pretty simple transfers. Um, the one thing that's kind of challenging is like free dumbbells.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
having,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
them, moving in places,
Yeah.
like plates. That can be kind of challenging. Having a friend is always a great
Yeah.
option at the gym for anybody, even if you're not paralyzed. But
Yeah.
just having that extra little support. And um, I've like since I was injured, I've been super into like how I can preserve my body. It might not seem that way from like all the stuff I do on my Instagram, but I'm super
Yeah.
like
It's more like, how
cautious.
can I die quickly?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I try to be as cautious as my with my shoulders as possible. Like
Yeah.
I strengthen them 3 times a week. I try not to do any funky, quick movements
Yeah.
that are just unnecessary. Obviously, triathlon's maybe not the best way to take care of my shoulders as a
Yeah.
paraplegic, but you know,
Yeah. That's a lot of wear and
um,
tear on your cartilage.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Um, I don't think I'm gonna be doing that for a super long time, but it's always been something I wanted to do. I mean, even before I was paralyzed, I was like curious about the people in the racing wheelchairs, you know.
Yeah,
So fitness definitely been a long journey, great journey, you know, a lot more to come in the future, and it helps me release a lot of emotions
yeah,
that kind of came with the accident, and you know, because when you're not paralyzed, sometimes people that work out would get up and take a run, you know, to get your mind off things, and like that was taken from me. And so finding that outlet again to work through those emotions, super important.
yeah. Completely agree. I can't wait for you to start swimming because swimming's my area of expertise. So I used to be
Oh,
I used to compete at quite a high level here in the UK. So
oh wow,
swimming's very much my field, and I completely relate to the like frustration. I used to always just head to the pool and just take my anger out on the water, and that was literally all I did. And literally, you knew if I was having a bad day because my coaches would be like, what is up with you? Have you taken something? And I'm like, no, I haven't. Why? They're like, you literally haven't stopped for the last hour and a half, but you're literally just sprinting the entire time.
totally, yeah, and I totally feel so. I actually need to restate. I have been swimming, and I I learned, and it was awesome. I actually really want to make a YouTube video about that, just
Mm,
like what that process was like, how to swim as a paraplegic. Um, and I totally agree with the taking it out on the water. I mean, I've gotten to a point
yeah,
now where like my form's on point where I can just do a sprint, you know, and it feels awesome.
yeah,
And all I need
yeah,
are my arms. So
yeah.
it's pretty cool.
The only thing that's frustrating is so like I was saying this on something the other day. Like so I obviously stopped competing when I was around 18, so I'm now 24. I stopped competing swimming wise then, and then obviously went more into bodybuilding and weightlifting. The problem I have had is ever since then, I don't know if you'll get this, but like that switch in the back of your head, you know that one where like your body goes into overdrive and you know that you've just got to get it done. You just got to do it. It's gonna hurt, but you just got to do it. I've been really struggling to find that switch again. I think I found it in the last couple of weeks, but you know when you sit there like, why can't I do it? I used to be able to like really push, and I don't
Yeah.
know why I can't anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
I
don't.
feel that.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
have you had that at all?
Yeah. With cardio, it's like pretty like easy with the ski erg. You know, there's some
Yeah,
points where you're like, my arms are just going on their own at this point. Like, this is wild. We're
yeah,
just blacking
yeah,
out, going tunnel
yeah,
vision. This is
yeah,
going to get done. Um, with weightlifting, somewhat. I mean, like, I try to be pretty
yeah.
careful when I get into that zone, um, especially with the weights. But yeah, I definitely haven't been able to find it in weightlifting. But I think it's because I've been cautiously trying to avoid it.
Yeah. I think
But
as well, like I feel like particularly in cardio, there's a lot less possibility of like you dropping a massive weight on your head than there, than there is
right,
weightlifting. I
right,
sometimes will lift like I forget the US use pounds. I'm not sure what the conversion is, but 100. I'll lift like 100 kilo, and at times I'm
yeah,
like, if my arm snaps now, what is Plan B? Because I don't know if I've got one.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
uh,
totally, like exactly.
So it is. There was another question I was going to ask you. It's completely gone out of my head. Oh, it's going to
I
annoy
have
me.
a another thing to bring up if we can come
Go
back
on.
to maybe you'll remember. When you said, you know, it's a case by case basis, that made me
Yep.
think of accessibility just like as a whole. And I think like to get into buildings, I think something that people might not realize, like about me specifically, is I live in a pretty small town, and there's a lot of local businesses, and I mean it's built on a hill. Like there's some scenarios where it's just not possible for like a ramp to be accessible. Like that's just the hill
Yeah,
that it's
yeah.
built on.
That's why
And
you bought a Firefly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, the Firefly is awesome. I mean, I use it to walk my dog, and the snow is a little too deep at this point to use it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's been amazing, and I recommend it to so many people because it's
For any, because Mace has given me the opportunity for any UK people, I can get you £50 off. If you're interested for UK folks. So yeah, if you're interested in a Firefly, let me know. I can talk you through everything. But yeah,
It's
no,
awesome.
as I say, Mace has used his to do some stuff that I would never use mine for. But anyway, not to cut you off, but you were
No.
saying it's quite hilly in
Yeah.
Minnesota,
Yeah.
and
So
obviously it's quite
it's the case by case scenario is really like at this, some businesses and some people don't have enough money and they don't have the resources, or it's just not physically possible for the location to make things accessible. And I think like more like everywhere is really willing to do whatever. Well, maybe not everywhere, but as far as where I live,
majority.
yeah,
Yeah.
majority of people are willing to give you the help that you need to get into their establishment. Um, so, but for me, like living where I do, there's no reason for me to ever hate on or talk about, this isn't accessible, because it's just, it does make sense. It's not possible. People don't have the resources. But for other places, like if you're in a big city and things could be made
London.
accessible. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like that's a different scenario.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big one that people might not understand as a super case by case scenario.
Yeah, completely agree. I think you're completely right. It's difficult as well in my area. So we're so close. Like we're probably about a 40-minute, 30-minute train ride to central London. So like our area is very populated. It's very big. So like they should have they have the infrastructure. But then the further afield you go in the UK, so like if you're heading up to Scotland and that way, then you start running into the same barrier, like you say, of people just not having the resources, or the physical location is just an issue, whether that be because it's got a massive hill or it's just not stable enough to build on, anything like that. Yeah, that is, like you say, it's a very case by case basis.
Yeah. So I think that's super important to keep in mind when
Definitely.
thinking about all that stuff. Yeah.
Coming back to your sorry, we're jumping around a little bit, but
Oh,
coming
no,
back
that's
to your
fine.
gym experience, what would be something you'd like if you were giving some advice to someone who was newly paralyzed? What would some advice be that you'd give?
Newly paralyzed. Geez, I think the most important thing when thinking about exercise and working out after you become paralyzed is like, why are you doing it? And like thinking about, a lot of people work out just to be like generally healthy.
Yeah,
And as paralyzed people, that I think looks a little different. There's a huge emphasis on taking care of what we do have. And so, like, straining certain parts of your body and your shoulders to the max is just might not be helpful. So, I would recommend, or my advice is, you know, take care of the most important things to you. And as far as like getting in the gym, I might not be the best person to give advice on this because I just kind of went for it. And I was like, you know what,
yeah,
whatever. Like people, I don't really care. But, there were certainly times when it was challenging to get in there. And, I thought people were looking at me. I was afraid that people were going to come up to me. And like, yeah, it happens. People are going to look at you. You're
yeah,
different.
yeah,
And that's okay. And people are going to come up to you and ask about you. But overwhelmingly, what I've found that's happened is the more, I stay positive and I keep a smile on my face, like, like 90% of the people that come up to me and look at me, they're either looking at me because they're like, this guy's awesome. Like he's out here doing
yeah,
it. And people come up to me and they're like, dude, that was so cool. Like this is just
yeah,
awesome. And I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
thanks, man. And we're like high
yeah,
fiving and giving knuckles and
yeah, yeah,
stuff. So I think, my advice is come in with a smile on your face, and know why you're there, and there's a lot of resources that you can really just look up online, like how to take care of your shoulders or how to take care of your body or
yeah.
something. So
I must admit, I wouldn't necessarily use me as a case study for looking after your shoulders, particularly. Some of the stuff I do, I'm like, oh, that was risky, but I survived.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
yeah, it's so true though. Like that whole thing of that stigma that obviously going into the gym as a newbie, whether you're disabled or not, it's a very anxiety-inducing thing, and like it's very much nerve-wracking. And it's particularly as a disabled person, I think the thing to remember is a lot of people will give excuses for not going in the gym. If you're going into the gym as a disabled person, you're already one step ahead of everyone else. And
Totally.
because you've got some challenges that other people haven't got, but you're still deciding, right, I'm going to try and better myself, whether that be because you want to be healthier or you want to be stronger to be able to support yourself a little bit more. It doesn't matter. You're still doing something that your average Joe still struggles to get up off the couch and move. So, like, yeah, like take what I always say, and this is something I'm trying to do for 2023. Take the wins where you can get them. No matter how small, no matter how small the win, take it and celebrate it. That's what I say. So,
Totally.
like,
Totally.
just go with it. And also, you'll find as well, Pete, you'll start to get to know people in your local gym, and like Mason said, you can get support from them, let them help you move weights around and things like that. Because that is probably the biggest challenge going in, particularly as a wheelchair user. Is there's so much. There's like if I was to set up a machine on my own, it would take me about half an hour. And that's the big thing. So, like I say, just the more you go, the more friends you're going to develop, and then the whole experience just gets a lot more fun. But I do have a funny story. You saying about obviously needing support with weights and stuff. I was training with a buddy once, and I was doing what was I doing? I was doing dumbbell chest press. I was doing dumbbell chest press on a bench, and basically, so my disability means that my balance is terrible. So I'm on this bench, and he goes, right, here's one side, and then so he gives me one side and goes to give me the other. But because my weight's gone, I've literally just gone with the weight. So I've literally just gone sideways out the door. And you know when I was saying I don't look after, I'm not a case study for looking after my body. How I didn't break my arm, I have no idea. With this like 30-kilo weight on my shoulder, going, Ryan,
Yeah, wow,
can
that's a
you
lot.
take the weight?
That's hilarious.
It was just and the worst thing is I've seen it. So I've got a guy I follow on Instagram, Johnny. He did the exact same thing and snapped his wrist in half.
Oh,
So I was
man.
very lucky not to do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, look out for your wrists, for your fingers. I mean, they're all important.
Yeah, they're all important, particularly when you're a wheelchair user. Like I always think,
Yes.
if I break my arm, I have no idea what my plan B is.
Yeah, I know it's pretty rough.
It's that whole thing of like I haven't got a spare pair. Like I feel like if you've got functioning arms and legs, you've got a spare way of moving around. Whereas us guys, we sit there going, if I do one thing wrong, I'm just stuck for however long it takes me to recover.
Totally. Yeah, 100%.
Um, so what have you like? I was reading a bit about you, and I know you're planning to go back to college. Is it this year you're planning to go back to college?
Yeah. So
So
this fall, I'm going to be going back to college, and I'm actually going to go to Colorado, which is where Craig was,
yeah.
and going to school right next to Denver University, right next to Craig, 7 minutes away, and it's kind of my second family out there. I was able to make a huge community, meet a ton of people, put people in contact. Um, it's a really awesome place, and possibly one of the biggest, condensed areas of spinal cord injury people living in the world.
Oh wow.
I honestly believe it is. I don't know where else there would be such a condensed population.
Mm.
Um, so it's pretty cool.
That would be so like yeah, that is really cool because like
Yeah,
you've all had similar experiences, and it's like whenever I meet people that I've met online or I do this, I'm like, oh, that isn't a strange behavior that I thought I just did. Everyone does that.
yeah, yeah, totally,
So
totally.
what are you looking to study?
I'm really interested in psychology, philosophy, and I do some art. Like this is a piece of art
Yes,
right here.
I saw that on your website. You do phone cases and stuff. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah. I've
Really
got some
cool.
phone cases up on my website. I have an art Instagram as well, which is just mab_arts. Um, and like I do a little bit of that, but mostly I'm interested in like the marketing of it all.
Yeah,
You know, I want to use my art to convey a message to people for good. You know, I don't know what
yeah,
that is yet, but
yeah, yeah.
ever since I was really little, you know, I just was like, I want to help the most people possible, and so you know, slowly but surely figuring out how I can do that. Yeah,
That's really cool, and it's going to be really interesting to watch like your journey, particularly as you say, like because you've got a condensed amount of people with spinal cord injury. It's going to be so cool to watch what you get up to and see what you actually end up doing. Also, I think I remembered what my question was earlier because it's something I've always wondered. So you know, you used one of the racing wheelchairs recently, or you have
yeah,
done
yeah.
before. What is that experience like? Because I always can't wrap my head around like where your legs go. That's the bit that I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense.
Totally. I totally agree. It looks like I've turned into an amputee when I get into that.
Yeah,
And you know,
yeah.
before my paralysis, I was always like, you know, it's crazy that like every person who uses a racing wheelchair is a double amputee below the knee. I just
Yeah,
didn't understand
amazing.
it. Um, yeah, it's just that's just what they like to do, I guess. No, so your knees get tucked like you're in the tightest tucked ball you really possibly can be. It's actually pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, I
Um,
was gonna say.
yeah, and I have like hip flexor spasms, so that
Yeah,
position
I
is
have
like the
those as well.
worst for those, which is like
Yeah,
you're just
yeah.
so crunched in there, and so hopefully that all gets better, and I'm sure it will. But um, the truth is, I haven't actually used the racing wheelchair outside of my house.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so that'll definitely come. I'll
Yeah,
probably do it first, like on a track or just like a long path, but I'm super excited to get out there and do
yeah.
that.
I just think because, like you say, with me, I have my spasms as well, and I'm like, if I tried to get in there, my body would just scream no to me. We're
Yeah.
not doing that. It's like with me, like so because of the spasticity I have and the tightness in my hamstrings and my hip flexors. If I sit cross-legged, like you do in like kindergarten or we would call it
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
nursery, um, that sends me into like a laughing pain fit. And like the worst thing is, my physio used to force me into this position. I'd go into a laughing pain fit, fall backwards, but I couldn't untie my legs, so I'd just be sitting there in pain, laughing my head off, but in so much pain. So like, just the
Wow.
idea of curling up into a ball.
Yeah.
No, no, thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, but I do have to say, like all of the things that I've been able to do like that specifically, I mean, that's probably the worst one, but contorting my bodies in all these ways is like only due to the amount of stretching that I do. And like
Yeah,
weight bearing specifically, I'm in a fortunate situation where I can just stand with my walker with my spasms. But I think, you know, standing frame does a similar degree of that weight bearing to get, you know, those muscles kind of looser, especially when you have that spasticity. Um,
yeah.
I suppose there's baclofen too. Do you take baclofen?
No, so it's a weird one. Like my doctors won't let me have it. Like, but a load of the load of the cerebral palsy community take it,
Okay.
but I'm not. For some strange reason,
Oh,
I'm not
interesting.
allowed it. Fun fact: the only muscle relaxer I've ever been provided with was provided to me in the States. I had selective dorsal rhizotomy in St. Louis, Missouri, and basically to deal with the muscle spasms that came with that, they were like, "Oh, occasionally he can have diazepam if he needs it." Yeah, and there we go.
Interesting.
I have a funny story if you want it. Basically, when I had my surgery in America, so you spend so major surgery on your spine, they sever the nerves in your spine that are sending the wrong signals to your brain. Like it's a surgery that isn't. It's now slowly becoming available in the UK, but when I had it done at 12, it was very new. But anyway, so you're stuck in hospital for 5 days. You can't move, you can't do anything. You just have to let your body recover. And then finally, I got let out of hospital, and I went to Applebee's for my first bit of food, proper food outside a hospital. And so I'm sat there. I've just ordered my milkshake. I'm feeling good. And then I've got, oh, mum, my leg's really hurting. So, and they'd given me, so as well as the diazepam, they'd also given me, I think it was codeine. So she's gone, oh, you can take some of these. So I've taken these 2 tablets, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, why do I feel really spaced out right now? And then all of a sudden, I've just fallen straight asleep on the chair because my parents had given me 2 diazepam when they thought it was 2 codeine. So, and then basically my dad had to carry me out to the car, put me in the car. They'd gone to the bank, they'd gone shopping, they'd been everywhere. And I woke up when we got back to the hotel.
That's hilarious. You were just totally out.
So, yep.
Wait, so you didn't eat the meal at Applebee's?
Nope.
Oh man, you fell asleep. That's a bummer.
The worst thing is, so that happened to me twice. So the first time I had diazepam was in the hospital. So like I don't know whether it's changed, but at the time it was very, very rare that they let you eat soon after your surgery. So I'm always been a big eater. So I was like, what? You're not going to let me eat after I've just fasted for 24 hours? No, thank you. Give me the food. Anyway, so I've persuaded the doctors. They're like, okay, he can have some food. So they're like, what do you want? I'm like, okay, I'll get the chicken. And then, so they're like, oh, we're going to test Charlie to see how he does with diazepam, to see if he has a negative or positive effect with it. We're just going to put it through his intravenous drip. And so my food's just arrived. As my food arrives, they flush it through my drip. And literally the same scenario plays out again. My food arrives, I see it, and then pass out.
Oh, man. Unbelievable.
It was like, are you trying to kill me?
Denied food twice.
Oh, it was horrible. Like, absolutely horrible. But yeah, so that's my story of muscle relaxers. Is every time I have them, I just pass out.
Wow. Yeah, that's intense.
But I mean, it's not. It's the worst thing is, I think, because obviously naturally my body's naturally quite rigid most of the time, and that was the goal of the surgery. It removed a lot of that spasticity, but I still have a lot of it. Whenever I wake up from diazepam or muscle relaxers, I always feel like I've had the most refreshing sleep ever, because it feels like someone's just gone and relax.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh
man, those are some strong relaxers.
Yeah, literally. And the worst thing is, I'm not promoting it. I am not promoting it. I know it's not the best way to look after your body, but those are the 2 experiences. And both times I've woke up and gone, oh, I feel so refreshed.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I think.
But to answer your question, I'm not allowed baclofen, but other people with my condition in the UK do take it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, baclofen, I mean, is great for spinal cord injury. The oral doses doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah.
Some people get baclofen pumps. That is a last resort. Like, I'm saying this to you because I believe this very strongly. Baclofen pumps, last resort. Try everything that you can before you do that. I mean, it's a pretty invasive thing, I don't know if you have one. Well, you don't have one.
What is
a baclofen?
I mean, I'm not actually sure what a baclofen pump is.
Oh, okay. So it's a pump that they implant in, I think, like around this area, and it just slowly releases baclofen to your system, because sometimes the oral dose isn't enough to relax people's muscles. But yeah, that is.
That's invasive.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah,
super invasive, and it is totally a last resort. I mean, people have asked me about baclofen pumps, or like, do you have a baclofen pump? Like, no. Like, one, I use my spasticities to help me. Even oral baclofen gets rid of my spasms. Pretty much, it's super effective for me. And I think that it's super effective because I stretch on top of my spasms. So I stretch in the morning and at night, and also walk whenever I can, stand whenever I can, and use my standing frame. And because of all those things, that is what allows me to get into that super tucked position and be like, okay with it.
So Mason is the perfect example of what you should do. I am not, because I basically know I should stretch, and I know that's always been the thing that I should do. But I just can't the motivation's just not there. And I'm being brutally honest. It's just not there. Like I will only stretch really when a problem arises, which is the worst thing. Which is the
Yeah.
really bad habit to have, because you should always prevention is better than, or is it prevention? I can't remember what the saying is, but yeah,
prehab.
Yeah,
Prehab is better than rehab.
Yeah, so do as Mason's doing.
Prehab in.
Don't do as I do, but just keep listening to this podcast.
100%.
But yeah, it is true. Like just that looking after your body, like you said, looking after your body, and also using what you have to your advantage. Like you said, using your spasms to mean that you can stand and weight bear is going to be far more beneficial for you long term than necessarily like trying to get rid of those spasms. Because as well, like I think that was the concern. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that was the concern with giving me baclofen, was at the time when I really needed it. They were like, if we take away Charlie's spasticity, he'll just fall to the floor, because he uses his spasticity to hold himself up. And that was my biggest struggle when I had the surgery in the US, was that surgery removed a lot of my spasticity, but then also meant that like I couldn't even hold my head up. So like I had to relearn absolutely everything. Like everything felt really weird. I had pins and needles in my feet for 2 weeks. I couldn't hold my head up. I think I've said this before, but I had to get my dad to stand in front of me while I was sat on the toilet to hold me up, because I couldn't hold myself up. And so like it was intense, but so like using your spasticity to your advantage is always going to be a good thing, because also it prepares your body for, if you do go down, if you have a condition like me and you do go down a route of a surgery like that, you're going to be better positioned when you come out of it. Because my issue was I didn't have the physical muscle strength to look after myself. I was literally using the spasticity to do absolutely everything. So if you imagine they pull that away, I had nothing. So I had to literally just build from scratch. And actually,
wow, that's really interesting.
You're reminding me, we were saying about swimming and you were saying about learning to swim. So I've actually had to learn to swim twice. I learned before my surgery, again using my spasticity and I have to say the swimming before my surgery was a very unique style. I wouldn't recommend it, but it worked. And then the second time round, the hotel we stayed in St. Louis had a swimming pool in it, but obviously for quite a while we were out there, I wasn't allowed to use it because of my scar. Basically, the time was up. Dad was like, "Oh, we can go in the swimming pool now," because he knew I loved being in the water. So he threw me in the pool, and was going to like come back and get in himself. And they threw me in the pool, and I just sank. Because the way that I used to swim didn't work anymore. So I was like, so Dad had to jump in and get me, because he realized, oh wait, he's not coming back up.
Wow.
And so
that's serious.
So that summer I spent so here we have 6 weeks holiday in the summer from school. So I spent that 6 weeks just relearning how to swim and doing that. So yeah. So that's how I relearned to swim twice.
Gotta learn twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Although it was better the second time round. I feel like I know I'm a lot better swimmer than I was the first time round. But yeah, so there you go.
Awesome.
But I'm also conscious that we're coming up to an hour, so I'm going to jump straight in with the last question. I did pre-warn you at the beginning of the episode, as I do with all my guests, but what's one piece of politically correctness that you really strongly agree with or disagree with?
I still don't know where I'm coming from. I think I need more context. What exactly do you mean by this? People have given you pretty...
It's it's basically just a bit of fun of like, what's one like opinion that you really strongly agree with or disagree with. So to give you an example, to give you a disability example, I always use the one of like, in the term that we use in the UK for a couple that are, one's able-bodied and one's disabled, is, well, I think it's used over in the US, is called an interabled couple. But some people don't like that term because it makes us different to a normal quote unquote normal couple, so they don't like that term. Some people like that term. So for example, I don't mind that term because it doesn't it just says what it is. It's one
Yeah.
person with a disability, one person without. So some people don't like that term and they feel really strongly like, no, we should just be known as a couple. It doesn't have,
Mm.
why do we have to have a special word? But then
Yeah.
another example would be like I said to the beginning of the episode, one of our guests said that she believes that drinking alcohol is overrated. It's overrated. You don't need to drink to have a good time. And that was her perspective. It's more of like what do you feel really passionately about? Like, what if someone said to you, right, you can fix anything and you can change anyone's opinion on one thing, what is that one thing that you'd be like, oh
Ooh,
my
man.
god?
Okay. All right. That's a good way of phrasing the question. That's a good way of phrasing the question. If you could change everybody's opinion on one specific thing. um, I think like that thing would be that like there is a lot of negativity out in the world,
Mm,
and people like back up their outlook on this to the point that they're like, no, I'm just right. Like there's just so much sadness in the world that I can't be, happy, and people would go into like, you know, our society and like
yeah,
all this stuff, and it's like, yes, like these things may be true, but that's no reason for you to sacrifice your life feeling sad about it,
yeah,
you know? Unless
yeah,
that's really what you're going to take like from life, and that makes you happy, but people feeling sad doesn't usually make them
yeah.
feel happy. So unless I'm getting that, I think that's the main thing that I wish everybody could like understand, that through everything, um, all of the bad, all of the good, it's you decide what you take out of all of it.
Yeah.
And I wish people decided more on the positive stuff that's out there than the negative.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it leads into that like whole thing of I know full well that in my lifetime I'm not going to be able to solve the stereotypes that disabled people are surrounded by. That's not going to happen. I'm going to do my best to change it, and I could get really worked up with why am I wasting my time trying to fix this issue when it's never going to be fixed. But I'm at least making a contribution to getting to that point where there is no more differentiation between someone with a disability and someone without. But it's that acceptance of yes, we're not going to get there in our lifetime, and that's okay. Like I'm happy with that. I just want to contribute to the journey, and it's like that. The other thing that comes to mind with that is I've had people come up to me before, like, "How are you so happy?" And I'm like, "Well, I had two choices. It was either be depressed as fuck, or it would be." Enjoy what I can and make the most of a bad situation. Well, I say a bad situation. People ask me this all the time. Would you hand back your disability if you got the chance? And I hate to say it, but I don't think I would. I don't think I would
Yeah,
because one, I wouldn't have done half the things I've done. I wouldn't have half the opportunities I've had. I wouldn't know half the people I know. Like half of the people I know, like I wouldn't be on this podcast now. I wouldn't have spoken to
yeah,
you. I wouldn't. So it's all like it just life happens, and you just got to roll with it and make the best of a bad situation. Like yes, people have good and bad days, good and bad luck every now and again, but you just got to do what you can. And I think, as you say, trying to be positive as much as you can is better than constantly looking for the negatives.
yeah, yeah. There's this pretty, simple sentence that I've been thinking about a lot, that I just like asked myself, because it's just what you see when you look at something. Like, what do you see when you look at something? And that is so different for everybody. And I think like the most observable thing is the positive or the negative. And I think it's way more than just that. But everybody kind of sees something different when they look at the same thing.
Yeah,
There's whole different backgrounds, and your entire personality and who you are as a person determines what you're going to see.
Yeah.
and just shifting that as close as possible that we can to the positive in the situation, so that we can see the positive when we look at something and not the negative.
Yeah, and
But
I think to give people a visual to come onto one of your talents is like art. Everyone sees a different thing when it comes to art. Like you might look at a piece and go, "Oh, I see this." You might look at a piece and go, "No, actually, I see this." So there's that whole thing of it's all a matter of perspective, and sometimes you need to remember to put life in perspective as much as you can.
yeah, yeah, and I think it's an important question to like ask yourself um, at different times in your life is like, what am I seeing when I look at this situation right now? What am I seeing when I look at something? And like try to, zoom out and get some perspective on your own self, so that you're not so
Yeah.
caught up in your mind. Get outside yourself a little bit and just ask yourself, what do I see when I look at something?
Yeah, take a
Yeah.
take a wide lens of what's going on and try and look, like you say, look from outside and don't. I think that's another big issue. Don't internalize absolutely everything. So, like as you say, look outside a lot more than you look inward. Because if you spend too long looking inward, it can get very messy. It's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
but
And
but
I also want to touch on again,
yeah,
uh, like when you say I would choose the disabled life over, an able-bodied life. That's something I think about a lot, and I would be prone, or I would say that I totally choose ability over, not being disabled. Um, but I think like you're right when it's like you have a totally different life and all of these opportunities. Like we have no concept of what our life would be like at all if we weren't disabled.
yeah,
But chances are we probably wouldn't have been so involved with all of these amazing people, and doing this work that we're doing, and all of these amazing things. We probably would have looked farther inside of ourselves as
yeah.
opposed to looking out. So
I think the
yeah, I
thing that
think
worries me with that is how naive. I worry how naive I would be as an able-bodied person. Obviously, having experienced quite a few able-bodied people that are quite naive, I always worry like if I didn't get the exposure to disability that I have, the story would completely change and people's perspectives would completely change. So I think it does. It gives you a completely different lens on life, and that isn't saying, "Oh, like go get yourself a disability." Yeah, there are times when having a disability absolutely sucks, but again, I think it just gives you a little bit more perspective on people, how to interact with people, and how to like have a level of understanding and empathy towards different situations.
totally, totally.
But yeah, as I say, thank you. Like that pretty much wraps us up, I think. And thank you so much for coming on. But before you go, I always give guests the chance to like plug what they're doing, what projects they're working on, their social medias, anything that you want to shout about. Shout about it. Do what you want to do. Yeah, let us know where we can find you.
Awesome. Yeah. So you can find me on every platform at my full name, Mason_Branstrator. Should come up. I can spell it. It's Branstrator. Just try to sound it out, Branstrator. But yeah, I'm on every platform. And truthfully, I've been just posting about everything. I mean, what it's like to get around as a disabled person in Minnesota, where I live, all the exercise, what I've been up to. I'm going to be doing a triathlon. I'm going to tell you guys all about that, and just kind of try to educate, and inspire, and motivate everybody that's watching me, and um, spread as much positivity as I can. That's the mission. Help as many people as I can, really,
Love that.
and that'll always be my mission. So, um, just gonna keep going farther down the path.
Love it, bro.
Yeah.
Love it, bro. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been really great chatting to you and actually getting to know you a little bit and not just be sitting there liking your videos.
So true. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Charlie. It was awesome.
No worries, bro.